Hello and welcome. In this video, I'm going to demonstrate how to rename a field ID and label in a domain and have that change Cascade through ad hoc views, reports, and so forth. So to start with, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and launch Jasper Report Server in my browser. So one thing about this is that the way the program is set up is that if you already have a label which is different than the field ID, or if you're using localization with resource bundles, then this program is going to ignore those. It's only going to change the field labels if it matches the field ID. So because the Supermart domain samples all have localization involved, I can't use that to demonstrate. So what I've done is I've created a very simple domain, and I've put it in the organizations folder. So if you come down here to domains, I have this very simple domain test, and this very simple domain only has 3 fields, and it doesn't use any localization. So the 3 fields are store country, store sales, and the month. And so what I've done is I've kept the labels the same as the domain IDs, and I've created some dependent objects. And so if I come over here to topics, I've got this very simple topic test, which basically just has the 3 fields in it. It doesn't really do anything else. I've also created some ad hoc views. So I've created this chart view that uses just a simple bar chart, and it uses the country as the field ID. Now in this case, let me go back to that really quick. So in this case, what I've done is I have changed the field labels so they don't match the field names, and that's going to become critical later on when I show you this. I've also created a crosstab, and in this case, I have kept the labels and IDs the same. And I've created a couple of tables. And so one of these tables doesn't have any groups. It just has just the 3 fields in a table by themselves. And then the last thing I want to show you is this very simple table view that does have a group in it. And it also has a store country filter. So let me go ahead and demonstrate. I'm going to change the field ID for the month. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come in here to my product, or my Segwin window, and I'm in the right folder. So I'm going to run Python 3, and then I'm going to specify domain metadata mod, and then I'm going to specify my URL for Jasper Report Server. And then I specify the super user password, and then this time I'm going to specify my very simple domain test. Now let me double check and make sure that I got that right. So I come over here to my repository, and I go to the domains, and I'm just going to mouse over this, and so I can see my very simple domain test is there. I could also get it by going to the properties, and I can see the resource ID is very simple domain test. This is the parameter that I need to pass in. All right, so the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to pass in the field that I'm going to modify. So the field is the month. So unlike the situation where I removed a field, I'm going to change the field name. So I pass in another parameter, which is the name that I'm going to change it to. So in this case, I'm going to change it to month_2. Now, the way this program is set up, if you have a, let's say that I also change the underlying database column name. If I leave this the way it is, it will also change the underlying database column name in the domain definition, but I'm not actually changing anything about the database in this case, so I don't want to mess with the domain column definition. All I want to do is I just want to change the field ID and the label. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put the month back in here as an additional parameter. So what I can do here is I can keep the domain the database column name the same while I change my domain and my dependent objects. If I did change my my column, if I wanted to, if I'm changing it to the same thing, then I would just not include this extra parameter. Or if I changed it to something completely different, then I would put whatever that value is for the database column name and as this final parameter. So let me go ahead and run this. So it's going to take between 30 to 40 seconds for this to run. One thing that I want to point out while we're waiting is that in addition to passing in single fields, I can also pass in multiple fields in a comma separated list. So if I wanted to, I could change multiple fields IDs at the same time by passing in a comma separated list of the fields that I'm changing it to, and any database column name changes if I don't want them to be changed or if I want to change them to something else. All right, so now the export is completed, so now it's extracting. Okay, so now I should be seeing a bunch of logging information coming up here as soon as the extract finishes. There it goes. Okay, so you'll notice that there in the log output, there's a bunch of places where I'm renaming things. So if you run this and you find that there's an issue, it would help to go through and look at this log output to see exactly what was done and compare it with the metadata. If you want to try troubleshooting it yourself, if you know how to write Python, that's great. Otherwise, feel free to let me know. I've put my contact information in the wiki article for this project, so you should be able to contact me and let me know if there are any issues with this. I'm really interested in getting some good feedback on this. All right, so it's now going through the import process, and then once it finishes the import process, then it's going to go through and clean up the temporary resources that it downloaded. All right, so there it goes. So now let me go back to the repository. So now I'm going to go into the ad hoc reports, and so I'm going to run the chart one. Okay, so the chart ran. You'll notice that the thing that I was grouping on is gone, but I can still run the report. The thing that'll be interesting now is if I go to run the crosstab, you'll notice that the label is changed. Same thing if I run the two table reports. So you'll see there that month 2 has changed. And month 2 has changed in this report as well. So like I said before, this only works if you have the labels that match the field IDs. If you're using localization or if the field IDs are different than the labels, then those changes will be ignored. All right, thank you very much for your time.